Hello and welcome to Heavy Metal Rex. My name is Wace, and this is Tuner Talk, episode number 5. And today, my special guest is somebody who I've actually wanted on the show for some time now, and it's somebody you've seen on other videos, and that is Adam from Ecotech. He is a wealth of information and just loves Subarus. And every time I've gone to the dyno, every time I've gone to Ecotech, I've had a great time talking to him about, cars and games and pretty much everything else. So, no long intro needed. Let's get right into it. Adam, thanks so much for joining me on episode 5 of Tuner Talk. A lot of people on the channel actually know who you are. You've been there since the very beginning of tuning this 22. And do you mind just kind of telling us a little bit more about yourself and your experience with tuning and Subarus?
Yeah, sure. I began, kind of dabbling in college. We had a dyno on the basement floor or basement of this building, this engineering building, where we had the Formula car. I was on the Formula car team, and we would go down there and work on the fuel mapping and stuff. And I was not really, like a predominant member on this team at all. I wrecked a car. I tried fixing things. I tried bringing old cars from the dead back from the dead, but I was never like working on the actual engineering of it. So I kind of took a hiatus after college. I joined the Marine Corps and then got back to work. And I kind of made a poor personal and money decision and purchased a Subaru uh, at age 27, thinking this was a good move after trading a minty fresh Civic for it. And the engine took a took a long siesta after 1 or 2 weeks of owning the car. So I decided I thought it was the tune. I was the typical blame the tuner, mindset at that age and that experience level with this specific car. And I started learning how to tune on it. And I would spend a few hours a night in my apartment complexes parking lot, just buttering and fudging things with trying new things, learning about what causes and effects would occur, that kind of thing. And that was a couple of steady years, and then I began working at another shop out in Kansas, um, and I had a pretty good experience with learning about a lot of the super platform there because that was my predominant job was the Subarus and the import stuff. And I really kind of began liking them a lot because I think that they're pretty capable for what they are, and they don't seem to have a problem with blowing up. And so there's always a need for people to tune them or build the motors. So
That's that's a that's a
on a light
pro and
note,
a
right?
con for them.
It's something. However, like whenever they're done correctly, they seem to be pretty okay for a long time, a relative long time. On a lighter note, sorry, I kind of got off on a tangent there. Yeah, so I began tuning out there, and then I spoke with Misha, the owner of Ecotech, on the phone one day, and we continued talking before that, of course. But I gave him like some interest in me wanting to tune out there, and so started doing it remotely from Kansas City because I lived in Kansas City for a long time, for like the last 8 years, and then we just moved to St. Louis. And yeah, so I would do it remotely on Saturdays during the week whenever I could, and we kind of we started building a relationship and moved out here, and I've been doing it permanently for the last couple of years since, let's see here, like September of 21. Yeah, somewhere around there. So a year and a half ish at Ecotech. And it's been great. I've learned a lot, and I learn something new every day, and that's like the most important thing about my job.
Yeah. Hey, we
Yeah.
got to be careful. Misha's
Or
going to be
anybody's
watching
job.
this video. I the one thing that I had mentioned, and I keep saying this to everybody, is that was my first dyno experience ever. I had never
Okay.
been to a dyno before. I never even seen what a dyno looked like other than in videos. And I personally felt that my dyno experience with you was a fun experience. I learned a lot of stuff. Like you were really good at just like being just telling me what's going on. Because like again, I watch all these videos of people online go to dynos, and then they're sitting in what looks like a waiting room, and there's like a TV, and then that's it. And they're like, oh, here's your car. And I'm like, that
Yeah.
sounds really boring. So when I had scheduled time with you, I was like, man, I really hope I can go in there and like, and Misha's like, yeah, you could be all up, but you could sit in the car with him. You could just ask him every question you want. I'm like, okay, that's
Yeah.
that's what I want to do. You know, even if I wasn't making videos, I want to know what's going on with the car. Just
Yeah,
just
totally.
because, you know.
You got to be curious. Everybody does.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I paid 30 grand for it, and like you're doing some stuff. I want to know what that stuff is,
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
or even like some
Yeah.
of these older cars. That's pretty cool. So like you bought a car, it blew up, and then you fixed
Hmm.
it.
Yeah. Then I ended up building another motor. I bought an E-Way engine,
Yeah.
of course, and that was built by some dude up in New York or whatever, and it took a crap about a year in of owning that engine. It was bad from the get go. I knew it had a rod bearing that was already done.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then I spent like 3 months building my kitchen in our
Oh,
house.
okay. So is this we're talking about the same car, the one that you're doing
Yeah,
right now?
but of course, yeah. This is we're doing it correctly now.
Okay, so this is the
Yeah.
car that you bought, and this is the third engine that's going in it.
Oh hell yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah.
That's fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
I know people talk about Subarus and they blow up, but like I find that to be the most fun because I'm a tinkerer. I tinker with everything, and like
Yes.
I like somebody on my comments in my other video actually was like, "Hey, I have this car that I'm thinking about taking up to Ecotech, and I also want to sell it." I'm like, "How much?" I think I might buy
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
he sent me a video of it. It's a Buckeye WRX. You know,
Okay.
it's not a
Nice.
misfire. He says the shifter bushings need to be all the bushings need to be changed, and he's got
Yeah.
like one other thing that needs to be fixed. But I was like, man, and it's blue. I'm like,
Let's go.
I really want to buy this car, but I feel like the same thing's gonna happen. It's got like 220,000 miles on it.
Oh yeah. Look out for rust.
But see, it's
Look for rust
perfect
everywhere.
for like what you're that learning car, and then like taking it out
Yes.
on the dirt and
Yeah.
just like having fun with it.
Yeah.
I am
Yeah.
I There might be an engine in my kitchen soon.
There may have to be. I hope it is.
If
I
I
hope it
play,
comes through. You
I
play
don't
your cards
know.
right.
I keep saying it to my wife, but she hasn't acknowledged that I keep saying it yet, which means probably no. But she hasn't said like, why do you keep telling me about this car? So
Yeah. Yeah. It's because she knows what she wants to tell you.
yeah, she knows
Usually
what
how
I
it works.
want. I want that car, and I've always wanted a Buckeye, and this I don't know. We'll see. So
They're awesome.
you've been here with me for this car, and
Mhm.
so mine was the first one that you experienced, like actually
The
being
first
tuned.
2022, yeah,
Mhm.
it's the only one I've been on the dyno with
Okay,
this far.
so
So,
with all the experience that you've had so far with tuning, what were your general impressions when you saw like how this one was being tuned, like compared to the
um,
FA20s?
yeah, so it's pretty nice. They tune in a similar way as the FA20s. They have a few torque limiting differences, but not a whole lot there. They have an electronic wastegate, which makes boost control like just on the tip of the nail, like just perfect. Um, and honestly, the power band on them is incredible, and it has like we've seen a lot of room for potential, but also I got to give it a year or two
Mm-hmm.
to really know where we're going to be with that platform and how much power things can take. I don't know. I We're sitting with the same style 6 speed. It might have a lower general gear ratio or maybe higher. I don't recall how tight your gears were like how far away the ratios were from one another. But that doesn't really make much of a difference. It's still a split case six
Yeah.
speed. So it's got from what I know on the 5 speeds, they have larger gears because there's less real estate, than the 6 speed, or they have more real estate than the 6 speed would have because the 6 speed has more gears, so therefore they have to be smaller per gear. But again, the inputs and output shafts are also very small, so it's like there's weak points there, and the fact that it's a split case, enough torque will end up
Pull it apart.
wiping them out,
Uh-huh.
push them apart, and then the gears will end up starting to separate. And then once they start separating and they start crunching teeth,
Uh-huh.
it just kind of game over. And that's what you see on 5 speeds. The typical retort would be to buy blast plates, but honestly, I don't really think that's going to do much because the gears are still going to want to move.
Hmm.
The shafts and the splines are still going to strip. I mean, they're still weak compared to the barrel,
Right.
the barrel style 6 speed that came in the STIs, which
Hmm.
have much larger gears, much larger shaft. Uh, and yeah, like they don't split either. So, but they break in other ways. So, I mean, you
Right.
break
But
axles,
much later than like 350 torque or like 400 torque. Right.
100%. Yeah,
Much later than that.
you can be very very violent with them and still break them. Don't get me wrong.
Hmm.
At low power or whatever, it's all about how much torque shock the drive line takes.
Right.
Like if you got a lot of lash, that there is like a hammer effect, like
Hmm.
stay in the rear end and go on lash, that kind of thing, that can hurt things. Just kind of common sense. Think about like what you're doing. But if you're out just kind of dazing around and you have a real nice, not lethargic, but a nice smooth power band the torque comes in a little later with a larger turbo or something. I think a 5 speed's fine.
Hmm.
You're not hitting it with that immediate 350 torque or
Yeah.
330 torque, whatever you want to make on your VF52 or VF48 or whatever kind of turbo you want to have on the car, or something smaller than that, even like the TD04 that came on the 08s and the 06s and 07s. I literally just did one of those cars, and they punch pretty hard, like right around 2,800 RPM, like
Hmm.
28 to 3 grand, and that's a lot of cylinder pressure at that RPM. So that breaks things too. That not only transmissions but engines on top of that.
Right.
So it's like
Yeah.
that's a whole other topic is having the
It
power
is,
band.
but that is, you know what, I'm going to move that question up because that is a question I want to ask, um, specifically with transmissions, because I just saw somebody, so we've had two videos posted so far of guys claiming their gears blew up, and it's been the same gear, it's been third gear, and it's people that are tuned, are making at least 400 wheel torque, claiming to not be doing anything crazy, but I know better. I know what they're doing. They're
Yeah,
gears just don't
they're
just
having
blow
fun.
up. So, so my question was going to be: so you explained all this, which is great. Like, what actually happens when there's too much torque, especially in a split case, things start separating. So,
Mhm.
I feel like that's have at Ecotech specifically. What are some of these examples of blown transmissions that you've seen, especially these 6 speeds that came in the FAs? Because I feel like that's probably what's going to happen with this VB here in the next. I mean, it seems like it's starting to happen within the next few months.
Yeah,
I feel like we're going to start seeing this.
yeah. So it not as prevalent on the FA20s. I haven't seen a lot of them. I think I've seen one in the last like 6 months, and I think that was just from being kind of ignorant and disrespectful to the transmission and to the engine alone. But I believe that one had crunched gears,
Hmm.
and again, that's from shocking the trans with a lot of torque, like a lot meaning a little enough to do the
Yeah.
job. Like if you're doing 4,000 RPM drops, that will do it.
Hmm.
If you're not doing them smoothly, I mean, if you're doing them like just straight up, just dropping the clutch, and
Yeah.
there's still I can't remember what that's called, restrictor valve inside the clutch master cylinder that keeps the clutch from dumping.
Hmm.
It's like a slow bleed. It's like a bleeder of sorts. Like, don't call me a mechanic because I'm not,
Uh,
but I can figure out what it's called. So therefore, that kind of prevents the hoodlums from hurting cars or whoever you may be.
uh,
But the gears will end up stripping, like we were talking about earlier, and they separate, blah blah blah. I'm concerned about the massive amounts of torque that these dudes are making on a VB chassis on the
hmm.
FA24. I think personally, I have a prediction that we're going to see a lot more failures unless they've like cryo treated the gears or done something specific or proprietary to this transmission that makes it somehow magically stronger, which I'm going to be a skeptic here, and I don't think that's the case. I think
Yeah.
it's the same transmission that it has been. But I don't know. I don't know what to expect. I'm hoping for the best, but I'm going to be real with myself and with everybody watching. I don't think it's.
Well, for
I don't think
science sake, I actually did talk to Visha about looking for an SDI transmission.
good idea.
Just not only just because like specifically I want DCC. That's honestly that's what I really want more than anything else. But
Sure.
also it'll give us the opportunity to take our transmission out, cut that sucker open, and like look inside. Because I've been trying my hardest to get somebody to come forth from either like Subaru or some Subaru technician who maybe has already done it. Because like I want to know, everybody wants to know what is the difference. Because yes, it is still split case. The part number, at least if you go to like reseller shops, the part number is off by like 1 digit. But then like the gear, like I said, the whole gear ratios are different. So it's like, did they put, what didn't they do? And I think it would just be really good for science. So he's looking around on that. He told me to go make sure my wheels fit because he's got some used Brembos. I was like, oh boy.
All right.
Here we go. You know what? My dad only had 1 kidney and he made it to mid 60s. And I think I'm going to follow in his footsteps. They're not cheap. They're not cheap. I'm just saying, like,
they sell for a pretty penny, I'll tell you that.
Man, so I'm gonna I don't have a problem with like price and stuff like that. I mean, I do. I have a big problem with the price, but like, if we're gonna keep doing this, if we're gonna keep pushing this, I think it's a really good idea to have it. And then when we get, every time we come back and strap on the dyno, we just let Graham let him loose, right? Let him loose on the car.
Yeah.
Because I know Misha already told me he's got a FA24 block coming.
Oh, cool.
As like
I didn't even know about that.
Just in case. But also for like research, because it would be cool for us to be able to put it side by side with an FA20 and look at, I've seen there's like one shop, I think it's like DRP Tuning, that did that. And it was really cool to see, like the cylinder walls are way thicker. There's like some changes that at Ecotech they'll be able to say like, hey, look at this, look at that.
Oh yeah.
And it would be really cool. And then like, hey, if something happens, there's a block just randomly sitting here.
Ready
we
to
could
go.
have like the second built FA24 that we know of so far. We actually only know one. And it's actually the same. Those DRP guys, they put a couple of manly rods in there and built it.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. I think just for fun. I don't think they didn't blow anything. They just wanted to do it.
Yeah.
But and even then, they're not even pushing it that much. I think they were right at like 400. Which again is not pushing. That's what we're making already.
No, that's probably safer this way, honestly.
Yeah, I feel like I think 400 is going to end up being like the number,
kind of
like
the universal standard.
Yeah,
300 was for a while. Yeah.
And if we can get that transmission in there, that would be pretty awesome, because not only would I told myself I'd like to be there so I could watch them and learn, because it's so cool to do. And even if they'd let me do some things, like, can I take some bolts off? Can I run some cabling or whatever? I would be a part of it. I think it'd be really cool. And I floated to him. I said, hey, how do you feel about like being like the first STI swap VV? And like I looked everywhere. I can't find one on YouTube. I can't find one on Facebook, on Reddit, nowhere. Graham's been checking. He's like, he hasn't seen one. Nobody has seen an STI swapped other than the one that Prime Motoring did like years ago. That's the only known STI swapped WRX.
No. Well, not the Ascent. They did it. They did
it. They took it out of the Ascent and they put it in the Crosstrek with an upgraded turbo, a bunch of stuff, right? But
yes.
There isn't any other person that I know that's done it. So I was like, do it. No. Let's have some fun. Let's do some research.
Yeah.
Anyway, all that transmission talk is making me sad because I don't want mine to blow up.
Yeah.
So this is a question that's twice has actually popped up, and it's a pretty good question if you live in northern states or you live in like Canada. Specifically, it was a Canadian. They were asking like, well, we live way up, and we have a WRX, and the consensus is if you're going for gas mileage, COW-20. Use it. It's fine. But if you're doing any kind of spirited driving or you're pushing the car even a little bit, switch to 5-30. So the question was, is that still relevant for people in extreme cold temperatures, like in the negatives?
Okay. That's a good question. So the oil pan acts as a heat sink as well as any oil coolers that came on a Subaru at any time. So therefore, in the ambient temperature of say Missouri's hot and steamy 102-degree sweaty summer,
Mhm.
you'd be running 530 to 540
Okay.
because the heat obviously it's not conducive to keeping the oil cool enough in any shape or form. Obviously, and I know I'm kind of going off topic, but I'm going
Mhm.
to come back to it, I promise. So, like on the heat exchangers that came on EJs, there it's a little round cylinder sitting underneath the or right above the oil filter, and
Mhm.
that essentially acted as a let's tap off the coolant system to cool my oil, or let's
Oh.
use my oil to heat up my coolant, or to keep my. They work hand in hand. So
Uh.
essentially, the oil would stay at a more steady temperature rather than oscillating like you would see without any of the stuff. So when you move into a cooler climate, that EJ that has that oil cooler, oil warmer, heat transfer unit will essentially maintain the temperature of 180 to 200. It should. So the internal temperature of the oil in the engine shouldn't be affected too far by the cold. However, cold starts is a whole different ballgame.
Mhm.
So you're living in -5 degree Fahrenheit, let's just say Minnesota on January 5th, and you start up your car and you immediately hear the death clank from the timing chain or something.
Mhm.
That's because the oil in there has not made it. The oil pump hasn't pulled or pushed enough oil into the galleries up into the oil channels to make that tensioner pressurized or whatever, or their oil slick all over it. So the way to fix that and the way they show it in the service manual or the actual owner's manual will show you the little diagram of temperatures versus viscosities,
Uh-huh.
and you would typically run a 0W whatever up there.
Okay.
And I do think, however, if you're going to be doing spirited driving no matter what, I do think that that higher weight oil needs to be is kind of like a necessity because your engine is still pressurizing and in the friction alone is heating up the oil and
Mhm.
aerating things as well. So I think it's a wise choice to always step up your oil grade whenever you put extra load on the engine,
Mhm.
like almost always. However, oil weight and just the viscosity calculation in general, I think is completely up to the manufacturer and their bearing clearance as well.
Mhm.
And somebody that knows dynamic engineering of sorts, like any kind of mechanical engineering, will understand that. Like because I have no idea how they calculate it, but they have to calculate oil weight versus the amount of space between each bearing, and they probably use a lot of volume formulas for that kind of thing, trying to
Yeah.
figure out what is going to do and what oil weight. Because like NASCAR, I'm pretty positive they run like this is the old adage. I think that they ran like 20 W50 in
Uh-huh.
NASCAR, but they have super tight clearances. So why would you need that heavy weight?
Yeah.
Well, because you're pressurizing in those tight clearances create even more heat, and
Mm.
the friction of the oil probably that thins out the properties of the oil are not just they're not going to stay at that or that
Yeah,
viscosity,
exactly. Okay.
you know. So that's my guess on the situation, and
Yeah.
obviously take this all for a with a grain of salt. I have no idea what I'm talking about. So like there's like two things that I understand a lot about is tuning, and I would say I don't know enough about that either, but I'm learning more. And mechanical properties of engines and why they do what they do, but I'm
uh,
learning again more about that too.
yeah. So if
So
it works, then it's credit to you. If it doesn't, this is a disclaimer. You don't know anything.
100% take it all with a grain of salt. Yeah,
Yeah, because the oil thing, it just keeps coming up over and over again. Because of course, even in the FA20s, they were like just 530 is fine, and that's what came in the manual. But it wasn't until now that things are changed, and people in EJs run an even different, completely other different weight. Depending on how much power they're pushing out of their cars. And if you're like 500-600
yeah,
horsepower, you're maybe above 530, 540. You're going even higher.
yeah. You run 50 weight even like
Yeah.
550, 1050, yeah, 2050. I ran 2050 in my car for a long time. Yeah,
So just with so many and again, it comes back to we just have every time a new Subaru comes out, a new WRX comes out, we have new owners. And these questions keep coming back. And this time it's just been
Yep.
more confusing because now Subaru is like, well, in Japan we don't
We're gonna
run
drop the weight.
0-20, but in America you should. And everybody's like, what the hell, you know? And
Yeah.
it's
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. I mean, the EPA does play a huge role in however what type of oil we run,
really.
specifically for mileage and emissions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, and you get with the lighter viscosity, you get less loss, less parasitic loss in the engine
Mm-hmm.
with that lighter viscosity. It's not sticking to everything.
So I did some scientific tests on that. So I run 530 now, and
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks ago, after I talked to Graham about that oil question, he was like, "Just run 530," and I was like, "All right, I'm changing tomorrow." But I was like, "Well, before I change, I got fresh oil. Let me do some gas mileage tests." And actually, I just have my 10,000 mile review video up just today, and this is that I put it in there. So when I was on 0-20 on 93, I was getting about 360-ish miles. And
Okay.
I was filling about 15 gallons, so it was like roughly 24, 25 mpg. And switching over to 530, and I did that for 2 tanks in a row. So I was like fairly consistent, almost the exact same route because I take my daughter to school, I drive home, take my daughter. So it's like the exact same amount of trips, same location driving. So that was 2 tanks, and I did it again with 530, and I was averaging about between those 2 tanks about 325 the first time and 330 the second time.
Okay.
So like, to me, again, with filling 15 gallons. So, like, between those 4 tanks, and again, this is not the most scientific test, but, like, this is the best that I could do. I mean, I lost maybe 30 miles. So, like,
yeah, that's 10%.
you know,
No, that's less than 10%. That's like 8% or 7%.
So, I mean,
That's still a number.
that's not bad. I mean, I felt like
No.
it wasn't as bad as, they would want you to believe, like, oh, we did this for gas mileage. Well, man, I should be getting like an extra 100 miles per gallon if you want me to switch oils. So I just been like, I'm running 530 now.
Yeah.
So that's my science.
I think that's fair. And honestly, like you said, the loss is so negligible that I think it's totally worth the whatever safety factor you're getting out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And like something to think about here too is sometimes oils, like there's no real consistency. You have to send out oil samples to get an idea of like what is inside an oil. You need to look at like the HTST, I believe is what it's called, the shear of the oil and what temperature. And like the higher the number is generally the better in that case. And that oil discussion is a whole ball game too. That's something I'm not.
And we talk about it all the time. People less qualified than you will fight about this online. And this is why this question keeps coming up.
Yeah.
There's never a need for it, but we're gonna do it.
No, but it happens.
We're gonna do it.
The big one I think that Subarus really can benefit from is the A3B4 oils, which have a really high shear. Basically, they're good for turbo engines specifically. And so if you don't see like an A3B4 Euro qualification, then I wouldn't. Like we run Castrol, we run liquid moly, which I believe is an A3B4. It may not be, but it's a it's got a good shear on it as well. And we run Motul as well. Okay. And like I like Castrol in my personal car because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
And it's good for oil changes. But like if you're gonna be racing a Motul or like Molly or anything on that car, I think would be pretty awesome.
Okay. Well, good. That's some good recommendations because I not like cost is that big a deal. Something like oil, I'll pay the extra $5 if I know like it's good for the car. Like don't be going throwing the Walmart SuperTech in there.
No.
Spend some money.
Who knows what that is? Yeah, I mean, like they always say there are only 3 manufacturers, right? But who really knows?
Yeah, I don't know where that's coming from. So, all right, good. Well, we could talk about oil, and you know what? Next Tuner Talk, we're probably going to talk about oil again. It's just going to keep coming up.
Fair enough.
Oil is just something that because it's like everybody does it, whether you are racing, whether you're getting groceries, like it doesn't matter what you do in life. You will get oil for your car. So like that's why everybody asks all the time. So this next one, this is an interesting one because I wasn't exactly sure how. Like I read the question and I was a little confused. So I'm gonna ask you the best I can. The question was, what is the relation of your accelerator pedal being half throttle versus how much boost you can create through the RPM range as the RPMs are rising? Is there any relation? Does it stop? Does it keep going?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, so yeah, I think the fundamental thing here is the engine is an air pump, right? So our throttle pedal acts as our demand for more air.
Mhm.
And there are two different types of throttle pedals now. There's the drive-by cable and there's drive-by-wire, and neither are very similar because they do different things. The drive-by-wire, you can map out your input versus RPM and whatever other axes you want to have on almost any platform, and you can have 80% throttle at 20% input. You can have
Oh yeah.
20% throttle at 80% input, and then you can have it ramp all the way up at the very last little bit. You can do whatever you want. So let's just pretend we're talking about drive-by cable, which is linear to the little to the cable and your throttle pedal and your input itself. So let's
Hmm.
just say I'm giving it half throttle, 50%, and the engine is making, say, let's say 10 pounds of boost, and you're at 3,500 RPM on a 2 liter with a VF turbo. Let's just
Hmm.
say that. And so that thing is making, say, 10 pounds of boost at half throttle. You can try your best to keep that wastegate flows on the turbo and spool up some more boost out of the turbo. But the problem here is that you only have so much throttle for the air to flow into the engine in the first place, which creates combustion, or that aids in combustion. Is actually the third mixes with the fuel, and we get the boom, and then goes out the exhaust. And if we have only just a little bit of charge that goes into the cylinder, and then that little bit of charge turns into exhaust gases, how can we make more boost? Well,
Mm.
you can't really do that with traditional means. You have to have aids in that case, and that's something you typically see on an OEM car. I'll just say that. I think from
Okay.
the factory. So the only way to really aid yourself, and I don't know if this is the question or not, is to add more boost while you're or what the relationship is between the two. That's it. There is no,
Hmm.
it's dynamic, number one. It depends on a lot of things. Airflow, head design, yada yada yada, exhaust housing, compressor housing on the turbo. A lot of things make a difference there. So like on an FP Green, which is rather large turbo for the Subaru platform. I mean, it's mid-range, but it's large enough.
Hmm.
You would probably only see like 5 to 6 pounds of boost at half throttle at 30,000 to 3,500 RPM, while a smaller turbo would make more boost. But boost is also more of just a recognition of restriction.
Yeah.
You're
Hmm.
you're you're the idea of 35 pounds of boost on a really small turbo versus 35 pounds of boost on a very large turbo is night and day. The difference there is that the restriction is usually the exhaust housing generally that creates the choke point. So like on a stock STI turbo, you hit 20 to 22 pounds, 24 pounds, or whatever, you can hear that thing chirp a little bit
Hmm.
at the low RPMs because it's actually surging in that case. And the addition of cam timing and everything else that creates this a lot of massive back pressure, and it's just having a hard time flowing enough air into the engine, and it's hitting all that back pressure. You get the surge
Hmm.
on the turbo because you're trying so hard that it's hitting the surge line on the compressor map. If you've ever seen one, or if you've ever looked one up, you can see this huge line on the right side of this on this turbo compressor map, and that's called the surge line.
Uh,
And so if you're trying to flow too much air past the turbo's capabilities, it starts running really, really hot, and you get this. And the hotter the air, the
yeah.
more active the molecules are, and
Uh,
then we get this a lot of more pressure because of that, and not in a good way. I mean, you can make 28 pounds on a VF turbo, but it won't make any power, and it'll create a lot of problems. So like you do that on a larger turbo, and you might have a more efficient 28 pounds, and it's actually not throwing out hot air like you'd see on
mhm.
something else. Um, I don't know where I'm going with this. I just know that you don't want to do
I
that.
see. Yeah,
So,
I'm still
you
trying to
know,
understand. I feel, and I actually need to go back and find who asked this question and try to clarify. What I think the question was asking was like, let's say I'm driving my car and I'm in the proper gear, but like I hold the pedal at maybe 60%,
mhm.
and but the RPM still slowly keep rising. Is that also engaging the boost to keep rising as well? Since I'm not bringing in a lot of air, so there's not that much of a restriction.
That's a good question. Something to think about here is that as you're raising uh, RPM, you're also pulling more air in,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore that turbo, say whatever boost you were at 500 RPM earlier, would not be the same airflow as the same boost at that RPM up there. It actually might be more airflow because that might be more efficient there. But
Mm-hmm.
again, that's an efficiency question. That's completely different.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to show without a graph.
Yeah, and I'm
Uh,
not even sure what the I this is why I was a little hesitant on the question because I was like I don't think I understand the question, but then like maybe the person asking it is going to watch this and be like, what the hell are they talking about? I have no idea.
well, I mean, maybe we'll get some feedback, and
Yeah,
that'll be
yeah,
handy.
we'll definitely get some feedback. I think I even know who asked it, so we'll come back to
Okay,
that one. That was we
okay.
still learned a
I'm
lot.
sorry.
We still learned a
Yeah,
lot.
just vomited a bunch of
No, you'd be
things that I don't.
surprised. Like when people listen to Tuner Talk, they admittedly they'll say, "Well, I don't know that much about cars," but like I have learned so much just listening to Tuner Talk, and I'm like, "Well, that's good. That's any information is good information if you didn't know
Yes.
it, you know."
Yeah.
And I know I didn't
Correct.
know a lot of what you said, right? And that's and now it's on paper or rather it's on video, and I can go back and watch it and relearn.
Yeah.
But let me figure that one out. Maybe we'll bring this up again on the next Tuner Talk. All
Fair
right, now
enough. That's fair.
this one, I'm sure you're gonna have some things to say. I have some things to say on this. This is in response to JD Muscle putting out like a video for their prototype for an unequal length header for the VB, and I know that it was not great for the VA at all. And
Yeah.
I personally do not think even the slightest that it sounds like an EJ at all.
Doesn't it?
It
I haven't
never
heard it yet.
does. When people say, "Oh, I heard a FA20 with an unequal length header and it sounded exactly like an EJ," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"What?"
I mean, no. There's a lot going on that's different there, and that's why it doesn't. Right.
So the
Um.
question is, how you know, got you went through all the stuff with your car has unequal length headers right now, right? No, it doesn't. You changed them out.
Oh yeah. A long time
Okay,
ago.
perfect. That's even better because it's been said that even on EJs, we love the sound, but they're not good. So tell all of us, what is it? What is it about unequal length headers that's bad, and why we shouldn't have them, especially on FAs?
Okay. Um. Let me start with why they do it, and
Okay.
I think mostly it's packaging and cost, and it's easy to cast these manifolds. Like on the EJs I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
about, they came with unequal length headers. It's three pieces, and that's it. And there's two gaskets, a couple bolts, six nuts,
Uh-huh.
whatever. Um, that's pointless. I don't even know why I said that. But the truth of the matter is, it's packaging. It's cheap. It's easy for them to cast, whatever, to make these manifolds. Um, the FA came with a twin scroll turbo, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what they've engineered into this engine because it's direct injected. They wanted to go balls the wall. Let's go technology. Let's catch up with everybody else and get to the direct injected game. And they did that. And so they wanted a really efficient engine, so they put equal length header on it, and they put a twin scroll turbo, which is awesome. That turbo is freaking an awesome turbo for what it
Mm-hmm.
is from the factory. It's a great turbo. Both the VA and the ZB, the FA20, FA24, both came with great turbos. Um, I do think that the addition of a larger turbo is good too,
Mm-hmm.
but I think factory is pretty comparable to like a VF or even more. They make a really good amount of airflow. So back to my, I keep doing this. Uh, I just like talking about things that don't matter. So
All of this, it is all relevant, all of it.
it in a way, shape, or form, yeah. I think so. Unequal length headers are great because they're cheap and they're easy and good job manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
Bad because they are not equalizing the pulses for scavenging in general. They they act more along the lines of like a I'm trying to put this into the right words, but like if you ever look at race cars or any type of cars that have naturally aspirated engines, you'll see that they have different plenum sizes for harmonic, for that supercharge effect that you can get from airflow coming into the engine, and they harmonize into this beat, and
Mm-hmm.
they beat into the valves, into the combustion chambers, and you effectively can do that with a header. However, any turbo header, in my opinion, that's a single scroll, requires a an equal length header. That's again my opinion, but I'm sure I can be proven wrong on this because I haven't had enough experience with things that are and are not correct, and how would I know other
Mm-hmm.
than testing? But I do think that that equal length headers are fantastic for all around mid-range torque, top end power. I mean, all around I've seen increases even on really crappy equal length headers like what I bought.
Mm-hmm.
I bought this thing 5 years ago. It's still held up. It's a CNT version 2, so it's like a parent knockoff
Mm-hmm.
equal length header. Sounds good. Sounds like not like a Honda. Sounds not like Subaru. Kind of somewhere in between. But I think that's the flat floor layout and the way the air, whatever. I think there's a lot to do with that. And the FAs have a more centralized collector
Mm-hmm.
on the header, so they sound more common. And you'll notice that on the old FA20s or the FA20s, you'll hear if somebody puts an exhaust in their WRX or whatever, it sounds distinctly four beats. You can hear them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes on equal length, 4 to 2 to 1 headers on EJs, they kind of have this Subaru beat,
Yep.
like this. You know what I'm talking about, like the
Yeah.
rumble,
Mm-hmm.
but not quite. But
Yeah.
it's on an equal length header. It's like, why is this happening? Well, I think there's a lot to do with the design, the geometry of it. I think it has a lot to do with if you're 4 to 2 to 1, or if you're a Killer B style, where
Mm-hmm.
you're going all in.
Yeah.
It's a one collector, which I believe that one sounds the most aggressive. And honestly, it does work very well because everything's collecting right there.
Right.
And they're shorter, but they are fat pipes. So you get a lot of airflow out of that. So don't I'm not going to tell you not to do it because I've seen people get pretty good gains on the unequal length headers on the BRZ and the FRS platform.
Mm-hmm.
It gets rid of some weird resonances that happen at the lower RPMs and kind of flattens torque a lot. Even on the brand new FA24 naturally aspirated BRZ, that
Really?
one brought quite a bit of uh, the low end up. I think that one did pretty well. I can't remember whose car that was. Maybe that was an FA20. I think it may have been an FA20. This was like 2 months ago. Somebody
Because
had this
I
header
know you guys
installed.
did have one or two of the new BRZs,
Yeah, we have
but I didn't
had
know you guys did that much work on them with like adding headers.
no, we do a lot on the FA20
Mm-hmm.
style small cars. We do a lot of like header intakes installs for customers. But the I really do think that the equal length headers help substantially on low end, at least on the FA20s, the
Mm-hmm.
naturally aspirated. I don't really know why. I don't know if it was a poorly designed situation from the factory or whatever, but even on the turbo FA20s, I see, and I've tried to tune it out with cam timing. I've tried cooling timing to smooth it out, which works every time because it just pulls away power at that spot. But I see this hump at 3,700 RPM almost on every single stock turbo FA
Mm-hmm.
I've ever worked on. I don't know what it is about them. I don't know if it's me as a tuner. I don't know what, but there's a resonance that I think is happening there in the intake or the exhaust, and it may have something to do with the correlation between that and the naturally aspirated engines. I don't know. I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
But from what I've seen, which I've seen quite a few, the naturally aspirated units come through, and then also the turbo cars do a lot of those too. They all have the same spot, like where they kind of get humpy. It looks like an older EJ with a cam, kind of. They
Mm-hmm.
kind of like have no power, and then they come in.
They
You know,
come
it's
back.
weird.
So you're
Yeah,
saying like putting unequal length headers could potentially fix that?
potentially. I mean, I think it's
Potentially.
always worth a try. Yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
might just create like a just harmonic resonance that makes things happier. I don't know. It's always worth a test
Yeah.
because you
And
can always infer, but you can never know.
Yeah, and well, that's good.
until you
Then it's
try
good
it.
that we have it coming out, and then people are going to be testing. I mean, Druckmann and them, they tested and they showed what the power it is that they got. But as of right now, there is, as far as I know, there's no aftermarket equal length header out yet. So until we
Right.
get
So that
that,
would be
then we
that
can
would
look
be a
at the
good,
difference. You know,
yeah. I think that would be good to try
and
both
again, I
for
watched that
depth.
video. I'm sorry, everybody. It does BB does not sound like an EJ with the rumble at all. I cannot stress, like, I watched that video over and over again because I was like just listening to it because I wanted to make sure that if I said that, I listened to it enough and I would go back and I'd listen to old DJs and I'm like, no, it doesn't. And the VB is a much deeper tone than the VA, which
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
great. And I was thinking, well, you know what, maybe because of that like natural deeper tone, maybe the unwinkled length will give it some of that sound. But I think it sounds completely different than both. It's like right in the middle. It's like right between an EJ and an FA. Like it doesn't have any of the rasp, but then it has the low notes, but it doesn't have the rumble. It's just its own exhaust note. It's
It's a
very weird.
nice note. Yeah, it's definitely different than what we've been used to. That's for sure. It doesn't
So
sound
we'll
like
just we'll just wait and see what happens with that. Honestly, they said that's like their only second prototype. So I guess maybe there'll be like another one. So we have time, and we have time for a
yeah.
header for like Killer B to make a header, or somebody make a
Yeah.
header. So we've got
Yeah,
time. And even
for
though this
sure.
car's been like it's been out a year now, and we got like the 2023s coming out. It's still crazy. Like we have a lot of parts on the market, like a
Already.
lot of parts on
Yeah.
the
A
market.
lot of R&D on that.
Which
Yeah,
is
no doubt.
I'm very happy that that's happening because I'm a man. I love options. I don't like
Yes.
there being just like one thing available or like one
It gets
company. I like to
boring.
just pick. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you could have
Yeah.
like you could try different things. I think in your case or like especially with Ecotech, I think it's cool that we can bring multiple parts one day and just try them all out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it makes for good testing.
Yeah. Now I just
Good
got to
time.
get the parts so we can do the
Yes.
testing.
Yeah, that's the next step, right?
In time, that's happening. So unequal length headers, we'll put a pause on it. We'll put a pin in it. We'll circle back around to that at a later time.
Very good.
Next up, this is something I have absolutely zero experience with. Somebody had mentioned it to me. This was like on a couple of videos ago. Somebody mentioned it, and I had to go Google it because I didn't know what it was. And this is the Fluidampr harmonic dampner. Can you please explain to me what it is and what it does?
Yeah. So Subaru, I mean, okay, we'll just start off with any engine. They all have a crankshaft that's made of steel, generally, hopefully. And they are a spring. They contort, they bend at different RPMs, at different loads, whatever. They do all kinds of stuff, right? And the idea here is to not put a lightweight crank pulley on your car and instead do the opposite and put a heavier pulley that works with the harmonics on the crankshaft and the RPM, and this sort of self balances, sort of kind of counteracts, kind of acts like counterweight. Um, the idea here is to keep the main bearings from taking a beating and from breaking a crankshaft as well.
I see.
Like that can take, so you have a solid mass and it has inertia. And so without that solid mass and that inertia, say you put lightweight pulley on your car, lightweight flywheel, both of them not a
Mm-hmm.
good combo. One of them, okay, I would just do the lightweight flywheel because you got a large outer ring, big
Uh huh.
mass that can do the deed, 14-pound mass versus a 2-pound aluminum unit that
Right.
goes on the front of your engine. That is not doing anything for you except for hurting things. Um, this crankshaft that's doing the fishies in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of your engine is having a hard time handling that at the very other end because there's nothing connected to that at
Right.
all. There's
Yeah.
no transmission, nothing. So what is it going to do? It's just going to flop around and run a number one bearing out, run number
Right.
one main. Now you put a stock unit or a Fluidampr super damper. There are two different types of in style, actually, believe it or not. The Fluidampr has viscous fluid inside it, and that's how that operates.
Mm-hmm.
The super damper, I believe, has media of sorts inside it,
Okay.
acting as another type of damper. Um, don't quote me on that because I cannot recall for sure if the Superdamper has media or if it's a solid mass inside it. Let me look this up real quick. We're going to do this on the whim. um, so do this real quick because I'm not 100% sure. Wish Ben was here next to me. He'd be like, "Oh yeah, this is what it is."
Yeah, we need to get Ben because apparently he has a lot of answers.
Yes, he has answers for everything, and everything I take from him as gospel. That dude is he's a wizard. Yeah, so the looks like it's tunable, so it's probably you can put different weights, inertial weights. They're inertial weights, so it's like a clutch based fly, or like a centrifugal clutch
Hmm.
where the weights shoot out. So the idea there is to keep things balanced and reduce the vibration on the front of the crankshaft, and therefore, by doing that, it reduces the harmonics that occur on the crankshaft at that time. So again, um, nobody needs to be putting Perrin or whoever else makes the lightweight crank pulleys on their cars
Hmm.
ever. Please don't ever do it. Just leave the stock one on. And while you're at it, if you want to put a lightweight clutch or lightweight flywheel on the car, go ahead. That's fine. That's not a big deal because it still has a lot of inertia. But without that front end, that's what
Interesting.
breaks up. Yep. It's a big cause for main bearing. I think pitting really mostly because it starts eating away at the bearing as over time it hammers the crap out of it and it hammers the saddle too on the case.
This doesn't
So
sound good because I've always seen like
yeah,
people talking about, oh, they sell these lightweight pulleys, and I was like, I don't know what benefit it would be to even have it. But now that you're telling me that it's actually the opposite, maybe it just looks
yeah.
cool. So that's
No, I
maybe.
mean the benefit there is that you have less inertia or less rotating mass, so
Mhm.
you can rev quicker. But then again, like without that, the idea of having this mass here is to create to enable you to have this lower end torque because you have more mass that's able to plow through whatever you need it to do,
Mhm.
rather than having nothing there, and then you have kind of you're at the will of your assemblies mass, your pistons, your crankshaft, however much that all weighs as your inertia. So without that front end, you don't have a whole lot of extra
So
torque and low end.
you would say it is a recommendation from you to have one of these on your car.
Oh yeah, I think they're great.
Yeah.
They're not cheap, but they're really awesome. I think every single car that I've ever seen that's had one that I've ever driven in, it noticeably smooths out the engine,
Really.
like noticeably. Yeah, it's nice. Ben has one on his RS or TS
Hmm.
disregard. And we've had a couple customers with them on their higher revving engines, and I think they're freaking awesome. They really
Okay.
do
All right. Just add another thing. Add another thing that my kidney has
more
to pay
things to
for.
come. Yes, yes. Do they have one for your car already? I mean, I don't know if
Yeah,
they're the
I
same
believe
as
that they
the
do. I think
FAs.
that's why somebody was asking because I think they had it on their car. I'll
Cool,
have to go back and research that one again, but I'm pretty sure that's why it was asked. Like they had it, and
nice.
I was like, I don't know what that is. Like, is that a company? I have to, and I googled it and I read a little bit about it. And I was like, I've never even heard of this before.
Yeah,
So that was the first time.
yeah,
Interesting. So okay,
pretty
so
cool.
we'll
Yeah,
look into that one. I don't know that when I will get that, but how much does those
yeah,
normally
no,
run? Like 200-300 bucks?
two
About
fifty
that?
four.
Okay, all right. We'll definitely
These
put a
ones
pin
are
in that.
475 for a Fluidampr for an EJ. Yeah,
Wow.
they're not cheap. Oh yeah, there we go. For the FA20s, they're about 450 for the Super Damper. Yeah.
Wow.
So
That's
yeah,
but it is worthwhile. Because it's worthwhile.
yeah,
You actually do feel the difference and it's good for the car. Then,
yeah. Oh
that's
yeah,
not bad. I mean, keeping your
totally.
stuff from getting too fishy. All right.
Yeah.
So, next question. This is relevant to me as well because I don't know if did I tell you I broke my front lip? Okay, so I broke my front lip. I had an aftermarket front lip that I was testing for aeroflow dynamics, and I thought everything was fine. And even on stock height, somehow I know exactly what I did. When I installed it, I was actually on Rhino ramps, and I was like worried. I was like, I
Oh,
might be able to take it down, and I was able to get down. I got down from the Rhino ramps with it didn't touch, right? So then my side skirts came in. And I was like, well, I'm gonna paint these. I'm gonna sand them, and I was like, the same time, I'm going to take the lip off. I'll paint it, I'll sand it, paint it, get it ready, and I'll put it all at the same time. And in the video, which I haven't even edited yet because I have half of it. In the video of me after I finished sanding and painting my side skirts, I went to go take the car off of the ramp, or no, take the car up the ramp. Both sides, it caught and it ripped the
Holy
lip.
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but not so bad that I can't fix it. So then that same night, I drove around. Well, first I sat there and I cried a little bit. Then I got in my car
Yeah.
and I went to like every place. I was looking for a very specific Loctite, specifically for polypropylene. And I finally found it, and I have it. I just haven't gotten back to doing that because I've been so busy doing other things. So like my side skirts are just sitting on the basement floor over there, painted, ready to go, and the lip is is upstairs in the garage. I have to fix it, which I'll probably do that tomorrow. But the reason that upset me was I was like, well, I wanted to have coilovers for racing season and for autocross and for track day. Now I don't know if I want to do that. Then the other question was, there's coilovers, and now more and more companies are coming out with racing springs. Now with the suspension still being pretty stiff in the VB, what is your recommendation, or do you have any recommendation with just getting lowering springs over coilovers, or like some pros and cons if you've ever experienced it?
Yeah. So I'll give you pros and cons because I'm not an expert either. However, almost every car that I've driven that has coilovers, expensive, I think there's a huge gap in quality from kind of expensive to really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I think like $4,000 coilovers are freaking awesome. I think that $800 coilovers are really crappy.
Really?
I think that $2,000 coilovers are kind of crappy. But then you get like into this ramp of like amazing coilovers. I don't know what brands they are. I can just tell you right now, like stuff that we've installed in the shop that we specifically talked to like the tech about like what they are and how awesome they are and stuff. He'll say, yeah, these are my favorite coilovers or whatever they are, And then I get into a car that has like this, $600 set of whatever they are that snap, crackle, pop on over every bump down Lawton Road or wherever you're going. I think for the street, if you are not doing anything race worthy on a track, I think that the factory strut with the different spring, probably a good decision to make. I think that you could even do like the Coney inserts, the yellows that they sell for older Subarus. I don't know if they have them for the VABBs yet. That's a good one because they changed the valving and the piston, I believe, and that will allow you to go with the stiffer springs. The problem here is like you don't want to use too soft of a spring on too aggressive of valving because it'll blow the strut, and you don't want to use too tight a spring on too loose of valving because then you get the oscillation of death. I think it just doesn't work. So you have to match your springs to your valving, and that might take either some knowledge or some taking things apart or like Googling. One of the three, I think.
I would imagine that the companies that are selling the springs kind of do that already, right? Because like if
I would think so.
Yeah, right. Because like I don't know, because like the person who's gonna buy lowering springs is usually the person that either is not ready to buy coilovers, or maybe doesn't have the money to buy coilovers right now. Because I mean that's the difference, right? You're spending, even if you're spending like $1,200, $800 on coilovers, lowering springs are like $300, right? So like there's that person, and that person
the cost
probably is not going to do the research to see if that spring fits this coil or this strut or what is even in my car right now. So my expectation is that, like, for example, White Line, they just, I think like last week they posted that they're coming out with lowering springs for the VB. I think right now the only ones are H&R. I think that's the name of the brand. And so again, the expectation is they did the research. They say, hey, this will work if you stick with the OEM. Right? It specifically says you have to stay with the OEM, which, what, I'm actually going to need to go look at that to make sure that actually does say that.
If it does, then that's the reason. Yeah. I mean, I think it has a lot to do with valving in the strut itself. And I think that is what the failure point is if they don't calculate that
Interesting. Okay,
or
so
blow it
if
out.
you're doing any kind of racing, uh, coilovers, good coilovers. Now, $4,000 coilovers. That is a high
Yeah,
bar. That's really
yeah,
expensive.
that's I mean, you go anywhere from 25 to 4 grand and you got decent coilovers. I think you still kind of can find decent coilovers for $1,000 or whatever. But I haven't encountered something that I've enjoyed driving in the street, unless it had struts on it.
And we have a
To be
lot of
completely honest with
potholes.
you.
Our roads are terrible. Even our
Yeah,
highways are
but
bad.
yeah, so maybe it's geographically influenced by that. Like maybe people out in California where the roads aren't potholed out because they don't
Hmm.
have salt in the streets. Maybe the coilover game is great. Like just to kind of continue this a little bit, there's a guy that is here in St. Louis that had a pretty nice BMW that had pretty mild, cheapish coilovers.
Hmm.
Thing drove amazingly,
Really.
but it was an M3. Like I don't know if the M3 is just set up to drive well. I don't know what
Hmm.
it is. Maybe it's just the car, the platform, the springs, the strut. I don't know. It could be 100 things,
Uh,
but it just kind of your mileage may vary. Just put it
right.
that way.
Okay.
You
And
know,
I know we've all seen. I don't know if you watch any of the Donut Media videos.
the which ones? No, Donut
Donut
Media.
Media.
No,
Yeah, because
I
they.
actually don't.
You don't.
No,
Oh.
I
Okay.
don't watch
That's
a lot of
okay.
YouTube
That's okay. That's
videos.
okay. I was only gonna say because they do high low. They have that series for high low where
Ah,
they kind of and it's almost geared towards like people who don't know, which is kind of nice. And of course, their tests aren't the most scientific, but like the one they did was I think it was when they had the 370Zs or the 350Zs. They did try like cheap eBay coilovers versus like the $4,000 coilovers. And yeah, pretty much what you're saying. As soon as they took it out on the street, they were just like bum, 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 the whole way.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and there's less
not
adjustability,
fun.
right? That's the other thing. Like, yeah, the tubes may not be that great, but like also you have way less adjustability on the top hat versus, from like a $600. You actually may not even have any at all, right? There's a
Yeah,
possibility it may just be like solid top hats. I don't know how
yeah.
much
Well, I don't
you
know
get, but
anything. Yeah, you're 100% right. Yeah,
so
you kind of gain feature sets.
so that's something I have to think about here because I want to lower my car, but for performance purposes, not for looks. And now what I did with my lip kind of makes me not even want to get either. It makes me want to just stay a stock height because then if I lower it and then I put a lip, that shit is gone. It is. There's just
Yeah,
no way I will be able to live with that because like when I go into my office, it's a ramp, and when I came out of it, no matter how slow and like much I
scratch
turn,
everything.
it still scraped a little bit in the bottom when I had the lip on at stock height. So I know I can't even go into the office. What am I supposed to take every Monday I got to take my lip off so I can go to work?
Yeah, no, that's unreal. I would never
So
do that.
it looks cool, but I just don't know what's gonna happen. That I would like
Yeah,
coilovers, and maybe I'll just stay with no lip. I don't know.
yeah.
All right, so that's all of the generalized questions. Now this next question is very specific to me, you, to Graham, my car. Um, People were asking. I think it was like the third pull we did on the dyno day when we were 93, and something happened. Right,
Yeah.
car pulled the code. The code that you said was P0108 map threshold. Can you
Oh
explain a
yeah.
little bit more what exactly happened there?
Okay. So Grant and I actually talked about this, and we were both kind of inferring, and he brought it up. And I honestly think he's right. Is that was a way of controlling boost over limit or like over boost or any kind of tuning on the boost without adjusting this specific table. And that table is the voltage thresholds for the map sensor. So a map sensor, to give the fundamental of that, gets a voltage, converts that in the computer. The ECU will convert that to a pressure, and that's what you get. So for the scaling of this specific map sensor, they went ahead and threw the over voltage, so that means over pressure sensor code, at a pretty low pressure, believe it or not. I think it was like 21 pounds or
Yeah,
22 pounds at 3.7 something volts, something ridiculous, or 3.55 volts or something. I can't recall. Either way, it was kind of funny. I don't know if there is another reason behind it than controlling the fact that like the factory didn't want you running over a
More
specific
boost.
pressure or whatever. Yeah, I have no idea. It was weird. So we Bram raised it, and voila, we've got continued runs. Everything is good to go. But yeah, I think that's like a safeguard in some way, shape, or form from the factory tune. If it hasn't been adjusted on like Cobb tune yet, that maybe they haven't touched it on the OTS maps, then maybe whoever's calibrating for Cobb forgot to do that, or maybe they just didn't touch it for a reason because they didn't want people pushing it, or maybe they brought it down from the
Right.
factory. Maybe they want people throwing 25 pounds of boost at this thing with ethanol and making 450 wheel torque. Like maybe they didn't want that. And then here we are, where people are doing it. So
Yeah,
kind
exactly.
of is what it is. you
Interesting.
know,
Okay.
uh, yeah, food for thought. I don't know. I think it's kind of a funny thing, but yeah, fixed it. I mean, it was something good to find.
It was. I think that's the cool thing is like you're still even though there's like information out there, you're still finding stuff. Like we're still seeing like random stuff happen.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do that for a while. I think.
Yeah,
I think
it's
it's gonna be like for a little bit.
and that's good. I'm enjoying being a part of this whole process. And I keep telling Graham even that day when we were leaving, he was messaging me because I think maybe he had in his mind that I was looking for a specific number before we left. But I was like, dude, you can do whatever you want. I don't really care. I'm just happy to be here, right? Because like
Yeah.
it's rare to be a part of like a new platform with new information and basically even though what we're doing, there's no real right now it's all theoretical limits.
Yes.
Nobody knows the
Nobody
hard
knows.
limits, right? They say this, they say, even though what we know what prime motoring did, that's not an everyday case. That was not an everyday situation. Whereas, especially now we're seeing these two transmissions do things funky. And I don't want to say like I hope to see more, but I kind of do. I'm looking forward to seeing what breaks. And I know it's
Yes.
unfortunate for people, but like that's the only way to ever find out what is the limit. Where can you go?
How do you know?
And I said this in my other video about like, yeah, I'll get a clutch, but I almost want to just keep running the factory clutch until it can't run anymore and then just switch it out. Same thing with the transmission, but it's like, that's still a gamble. Like if something happens, can I break anything else? But I kind of want to just take it as far as I can go to see what happens, which means I got to get back out there, man. I got to get back out there doing my vehicular
I'm all for
acceleration
it.
testing.
Yes. I
But
think
it's just
that is
been
fair.
raining every day.
I know we can't do anything. It's
It's very frustrating.
not good.
Yeah, I've had to
Yeah.
cancel 2 nights already because of rain.
Did you?
Actually, yeah, 2 buddies with built STIs. I wanted to go and do some testing.
Cool.
Just every time, like it's funny. One of them, the morning of we found out it was going to rain, and then the other one, I was halfway there. I was halfway to him, and it started raining, and I was like, dude, this is what. And then the funny thing is, when I turned around, the rain followed me all the way home, and it hadn't rained where I was, and it came with me, and I'm like, this.
It just came back.
I was so
following
pissed. I'm
you.
like, this is just so stupid,
Like-
you know?
Bad juju.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, well, at
Just
least I'm
stop it.
glad that like it happened. So it didn't happen while we were doing it, because I want people to be safe. It's science and safety.
Science and safety.
And since then, so that was like last week. Since then, it's just been raining, and then this weekend it's raining both days again, and then it's raining like 3 days next week. So it's like,
Yeah, we're into that season now. Bummer.
it's the trees need water. I guess I don't know. So that's all the questions I had. I have one last question. This is more of a fun one that I've been asking people. Do you prefer the new VB with paint matched body parts, or do you like the honeycomb that the car's been coming with, the standard look?
I actually am partial to the factory look. I kind of like it.
Yeah.
I know but here's the thing. I own a narrow, so it's like, what kind of taste do I have? I don't know.
We were making fun of narrow
know.
bodies on Reddit today, actually. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, I got made fun of yesterday for it. I even cussed a guy out on Facebook over it as a joke. Of course. So like I was just like, "F you, man!" Like I know who it was, because he said something about narrow bodies. I was like, "This is my car, man. They are the ugliest cars around, and they are pretty inadequate in a lot of ways. But I still love it, and it's gonna be a ripper when I put this engine in. Can't wait.
I can't wait either. I never really had a problem with narrow bodies, because they still came in a hatch.
Yeah,
You beat me
I mean,
there.
there you go.
You beat me there.
Yeah,
I can't have
I
an
can
hatch.
still strap on some fender flares or something and make it look happier. Could do that too. I don't know. I'll figure something out. Why
Yeah.
not? I'll just leave it as is.
Yeah, you know what? Own it. own that narrow body, you know?
I own the crap out of it. I don't have any more.
Fantastic.
We're good.
That's really good. Do you have okay? So do you have any wisdom for anybody who is doesn't have a Subaru yet, maybe is thinking about it, or is new to the Subaru community? What are some like just some basic words of wisdom, some words of inspiration that you can give these guys or gals?
Like, say you're shopping for a car or something like that, or
Say
just
like let's say
generalize?
you're thinking about getting a Subaru, but you hear everything that happens, you know, like Subarus blow up, this
Okay.
and that.
Yeah. Stay away. Stay away. Um, no, I'm just kidding. Honestly, they're very good cars in stock form. Maybe some minor tune adjustments, the factory stuff, but factory power levels pretty adequate. However, don't forget an EJ has, and Ben will always remind me, and Ben is a guy I work with at Ecotech,
Mhm.
we buddies there. He always reminds me that the EJ platform has the size bearings that came out of the EJ16 main rod and main bearings. I mean, everything
Mhm.
is sized for that displacement engine. So we're running goober amount of power. Some people are on a 2.5 liter that has these tiny little rod and main bearings and this tiny little crankshaft. It's like this big, you know, and it's like doing the Lord's work right in front of your very eyes, and you just wonder
Interesting.
how is it doing this?
I didn't know
It's
that.
very interesting. And then you look at other cars that have like um, main girdles that clamps the crankshaft in, and these
Mhm.
bearings are gigantic and like a 2J, you know, and that's why they're so freaking lean and they're bulletproof because they got iron blocks. The Subaru
Mhm.
case is aluminum. You have one spun rod bearing and you hammer the crap out of the case, and then the saddles that hold the mains in
Mhm.
start separating, and then you start losing oil pressure, everything, and then kaboom, it's done, you know, or whatever. Just one spun rod can ruin the entire engine, you
Okay.
know. But
You're
they
you're
do the
s-
Lord's work.
you're scaring our potential Subaru owners here.
Just telling you the honest to God fact. Keep it stock.
Hmm.
Don't modify it, and make sure it was owned by somebody that respected their vehicles and had a good idea of what's going on. Buying a used one like I did and not knowing much history about it, one that was modified,
Hmm.
generally not a good idea. And we see it a lot. We get a lot of people that purchase a car and then a week after or 2 weeks after it blows up because whoever traded it in knew it was on its way.
That's
And
just the
it's
worst.
depressing.
That is really
So
bad.
yeah, just know your car. I think that's the best thing is like have a mechanic with you, inspect things, look for sweaty engine, look for oil, that
Hmm.
kind of thing. Subaru, the EJ, the all of the flat floors will burn oil. That's just kind of the nature of the beast because the oil settles on the bottom of the cylinders,
Hmm.
and there's still a gap there, so it will still natively pull oil into the cylinder, whatever, or into the combustion chamber. It kind of is what it is.
Hmm.
But massive oil consumption is a big problem with the cars, and that's what leads to the engine failures in the first place, for the most part.
It all just always comes back to oil.
The
Somehow we
blood,
always just come back to oil.
the blood. Yeah,
So
you need it. You need it.
fantastic. Anyway, Adam, thank you so much for taking the time to do episode 5 of Tuner Talk. I can't believe we're up to episode 5.
That's wild.
It
Yeah,
is. It's really good. I hope you guys learned something from these. And remember, you guys got to put questions down. If you have any questions at all, whatever you want to know, it doesn't matter how weird it is. Even if you don't understand how to ask the question, we'll find a way to turn it into a question. We'll turn your statement into a question, and we'll bring it up here on Tuner Talk, and we'll ask. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you in the next video.
cool.